The night Sofia was given away, the city held its breath. Rain blazed the streets like black glass, and the headlights of her father's car cut through the darkness as if slicing her last chance to escape. She sat in the back seat, spine straight, hands folded tightly in her lap, not because she was calm, but because she had learned that stillness was the safest form of survival. Every bump in the road felt like a verdict being read aloud. She didn't cry. Tears had never softened her father's voice, never delayed his punishments. Tonight would be no different. Inside the car, her father spoke as if she weren't there. He talked about debts, about disrespect, about how Luca Moretti didn't forgive insults easily. Sofia understood enough to know the truth. She was the payment. Not money, not territory, her. The daughter he had always hidden behind closed doors, the one relatives whispered about at family gatherings. Too big, too plain, too much. In his world, imperfections were weaknesses, and weaknesses were disposable. The gates of the Moretti mansion opened slowly, like a mouth ready to swallow her whole. Armed guards watched without expression. Power lived here. It pulsed in the stone walls, the cold iron gates, the silence that felt heavier than shouting. When the car stopped, her father stepped out first, straightening his coat, putting on the face he wore for dangerous men. Sofia followed, her shoes sinking slightly into wet gravel, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Inside, the air smelled of leather and expensive smoke. A long corridor stretched ahead, lit by chandeliers that threw sharp light and sharper shadows. Her father's footsteps echoed as if announcing her shame. They stopped in a vast hall where Luca Moretti stood waiting. He was taller than she imagined, broader, dressed in black so perfectly tailored it seemed molded to his body. His face was calm, carved by discipline and violence held in check. This was the man people crossed themselves over before speaking his name. Sofia kept her eyes lowered. She knew the rules. Do not meet the gaze of predators. Her father spoke first, his voice smooth, rehearsed. Apologies were offered, excuses layered carefully. Then, with a gesture too casual to be accidental, he pushed Sofia forward. For my disrespect, he said, I offer you what matters to me most. The words hit harder than a slap. Sofia felt the room tilt. What mattered most? A lie spoken so easily it almost made her laugh. She waited for Luca's reaction. Dismissal, anger, amusement. Anything. Instead, there was silence. When Luca finally looked at her, it wasn't with hunger or cruelty. It was as if something in him stalled, like a weapon misfiring. His eyes, dark and assessing, softened in a way no one there had ever seen. Sofia felt it before she understood it, the weight of his attention, steady and strange, not stripping her down but holding her together. She lifted her gaze despite herself. Their eyes met. In that instant, Luca Moretti forgot the debt, the insult, the rules that governed his empire. He saw fear, yes, but also resolve. He saw a woman standing in the aftermath of lifelong rejection, still upright, still breathing. There was a quiet strength in her that unsettled him more than any threat ever had. She didn't plead, she didn't shrink, she stood there, bracing for pain, and something in his chest twisted violently. This is what they sent me, he thought. This is who they thought deserved punishment. Anger flared, not at her, but for her. Her father kept talking, unaware of the shift in the air. Luca barely heard him. He was watching the way Sofia's fingers curled inward, the way her shoulders tensed as if expecting a blow. No one had ever looked at him like this, not with terror and dignity intertwined. It struck him with the force of revelation. Enough, Luca said. The single word cracked through the hall like a gunshot. Her father fell silent instantly. Luca stepped closer. Sofia's breath caught, but she didn't step back. He noticed that too. Up close, he could see the faint tremor in her hands, the strength it took to remain standing. He spoke to her directly, ignoring the man who had delivered her like cargo. What is your name? Sofia, she answered, her voice low but steady. He nodded, as if sealing something unseen. Then he turned to her father, his expression hardening into something lethal. You may go, Luca said coldly. Your debt is being reconsidered. Her father hesitated, shocked. Sofia was not meant to be reconsidered. She was meant to be discarded. As the guards escorted her father away, Luca looked back at Sofia. For the first time in her life, the silence that followed did not feel like condemnation. It felt like the beginning of something dangerous, impossible, and irreversible. Sophia woke the next morning expecting fear to rush back in like a tide. Instead, there was quiet. Real quiet. The kind that didn't hum with threat. Sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, warm and gentle, touching her skin as if testing whether she was real. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memory returned all at once. The mansion, the man everyone feared, the night she had been given away like a punishment. She sat up slowly, half expecting guards, orders, humiliation. None came. The room was vast and elegant, decorated in deep, calming tones. A tray of food waited nearby, fresh fruit, warm bread, tea still steaming. No one had ever prepared a meal for her like this. Not without expectation, not without cruelty hidden behind it. She didn't touch it. Hours passed. She paced, then sat, then paced again. Every sound made her heart jump. Finally, there was a knock. Soft, respectful. The door opened, and Luca Moretti stood there, not in his dark suit, but in a simple shirt, sleeves rolled up, looking less like a king of shadows and more like a man carrying an unfamiliar weight. "I hope the room is acceptable," he said. She nodded, unsure how to speak to someone who held her fate so casually in his hands. "I won't force you to eat," he continued, noticing the untouched tray. "But it's there if you want it." He didn't step closer. He didn't demand anything. He stood at a careful distance, as though afraid a wrong move might break something fragile between them. That unsettled her more than cruelty ever had. "Why am I here?" she asked finally. The question hung heavy. Luca didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the defenses she wore like armor. He recognized them. They were the same ones he had built around himself long ago, just forged from different pain. "You were sent here as punishment," he said honestly. "But I don't accept people as punishments." Her fingers tightened around the fabric of her dress. "Then send me away." He shook his head slowly. "I won't." The certainty in his voice frightened her. Not because it sounded dangerous, but because it sounded sincere. Days followed like this. Luca never crossed her boundaries. He arranged for clothes tailored to her body, not to hide her, not to reshape her, but to fit her exactly as she was. When she protested, embarrassed, he simply said, "No one deserves to feel like they must disappear." They ate together eventually, at opposite ends of a long table at first. Conversation was sparse, awkward, but never cruel. He listened when she spoke, never interrupting, never correcting. No one had ever listened to her that way. Slowly, without permission, her guard began to lower. She learned things about him too. Not the rumors. The truth. That he hated waste. That he slept little. That he carried guilt like a second heart. She noticed how his eyes softened when she laughed. Really laughed, at something small and ordinary. She noticed how his men watched her, confused by the way he treated her, how the entire house seemed to bend around her presence. One evening, she found him standing on the balcony, staring out at the city as if it were an enemy he could never quite defeat. The air was cool, the sky bruised purple and gold. "You don't look at me the way others do," she said quietly. He turned, surprised. "How do they look at you?" "As if I'm something to endure," she replied. "Or fix." Luca's jaw tightened. Then they were blind. The words hit her harder than any insult ever had. She felt them lodge deep in her chest, rearranging something she had believed about herself for as long as she could remember. That night, when she lay awake, she realized something terrifying. She felt safe, truly safe. And safety, she knew, could become dangerous if taken away. Luca felt it too. He walked his halls restless, aware that the woman sleeping under his roof had undone him without trying. She was not what the world told him to desire. She was something rarer, something real. And he knew, with a clarity that scared him, that the moment he allowed himself to claim her, there would be no turning back. By the time dawn broke, both of them understood the truth neither had spoken aloud yet. This was no longer a punishment. It was the beginning of a bond strong enough to challenge blood, power, and fate itself. The morning her father returned, the mansion felt different. The air was tight, expectant, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Sophia sensed it before anyone told her. Years of living under his shadow had sharpened her instincts. When she saw his car through the tall windows, her chest tightened, old fear clawing its way back to the surface. Some wounds never fully healed, they only learned how to stay quiet. Luca found her standing there, hands clasped together, staring down at the courtyard. He didn't ask if she was afraid. He already knew. "You don't have to see him," he said calmly. Sophia turned to face him. For the first time, she didn't lower her eyes. "I do." They walked together into the grand hall where her father waited, flanked by men who no longer looked quite as confident as they once had. Power had shifted here, and everyone felt it. Her father's gaze landed on her, sharp and assessing, searching for signs of ruin. He didn't find them. Sophia stood taller than she ever had in his presence, dressed in a gown that didn't try to hide her body, her face calm, her breathing steady. "This isn't what we agreed," her father said, addressing Luca, barely sparing her a glance. Luca stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Sophia without touching her. The gesture was subtle, but unmistakable. "Protection, not possession." "You don't get to speak of agreements," Luca replied coldly. "You forfeited that right the moment you tried to use a human being as currency." Her father's mouth tightened. She was meant to pay a debt. Sophia felt the old words rise in her chest, but this time they didn't crush her. They broke apart, powerless. "She has a name," Luca said. "And a choice." For a moment, the room was silent. Then Luca did something that shocked everyone, including Sophia. He reached for her hand. Not roughly, not to claim ownership. He waited until she placed her hand in his willingly. "I choose to stay," she said before anyone could stop her. Her father stared at her, disbelief flashing across his face. "You don't know what you're doing." Sophia met his gaze, steady and unafraid. "I finally do." The truth settled in the room like a verdict.